Very good, very good. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight here at Active Claremont. Tonight, we have a wonderful presentation put on by the California Botanic Garden. Specifically, we have David Bryant from the California Botanic Garden. I say that name twice because they recently changed their name in February, right, David?
March, but very close.
Very close, very close. Very good. Okay. All right. So hopefully everyone can hear me. I actually have a bit of a glitch on my end, but that's okay. Hopefully, Brian, give me the high sign. Brian, can you? When are we on? We're on right now, Brian. Got some comments already rolling in, David. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We have a wonderful presentation put together for you. Specifically, I should say, David has a wonderful presentation put to you. I'm the man behind the curtain because somebody, frankly, has to be. David, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know. I'll let you take the floor, basically.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. My name is David Bryant. I'm Director of Visitor Experience at California Botanic Garden, and we are so proud to call Claremont home. I like to say that we put the trees in the city of trees and PhDs. So we also actually seem to put PhDs in there as well because we have a research program as part of Claremont Graduate University, and so we graduate cutting-edge botanists in the world of plant science, both in PhD and master's programs. So California Botanic Garden is entirely devoted to California native plants. That is tremendous, and it is a really important mission. And so we work every day to conserve and celebrate the plants that make California special. And so my job there is to run the public side of the garden and to think critically about how we're engaging with our audiences. And this is just one way. And so I'm so delighted to be here with you today at Active Claremont. And we do many other forms of public engagement. So we are indeed open right now, which is really great, limited in a limited fashion from Wednesdays to Sundays. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we also have a lot of new online content. So we have a podcast, we have virtual tours. We're going to gear up for Freeze Wild, which I'm really excited to talk to you about. It's a marriage between my two favorite things, native plants and ice cream. So we're doing a lot of crazy things at California Botanic Garden, and I've put together a presentation to kind of lead you through who we are and what we do.
That is awesome. I did do a little research. You are open today until 8, so if anybody wants to pause the stream now and head on out, you can do that and come back and watch this later. I noticed some of the days this week you were closed due to the heat. Is that something you're having to struggle with, or
Yeah.
What are we grappling with there? What should people know?
Yeah, that's an awesome point. So we're closed right now Mondays and Tuesdays. We're open Wednesdays through Sundays, and what we're really excited about is that this is the first time we've really been able to offer extensive evening hours. So as Matt mentioned, we're actually open till 8 tonight. We are open 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. We close for a 2-hour break in that middle of the hottest part of the day, but also to help us sanitize and get everything ready for the next wave of people. And then we open back up at 3 p.m. and work from 3 to 8 and welcome people then. In terms of the heat policy, if the weather is predicted to be 97 degrees or above, according to Weather Underground, we will alert everyone and post on our website that we'll have modified hours that preceding day when it's predicted to be hot. So we'll be open with modified hours from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then we'll be open back up from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. So to ensure the safety and health of our visitors and our staff.
Sure. And I know that your website it seems to be updated daily with that information, so people can go to your homepage there at calbg.org.
Right, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And the garden used to be, it's the Rancho Santa Ana Botanical Garden?
You're one of the few people that can get that name right. But we used to be known as Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden. And that was actually indeed our name for almost 100 years. We were founded in 1927. And that name has a really rich legacy, and we're proud of it. And we transitioned to being California Botanic Garden this spring for a number of reasons. One is that the former Rancho and the former Botanic Garden in 1927 was located closer to Santa Ana River. And so that facet made more sense in that time period.
Sure.
When we moved up to Claremont in the 50s, there wasn't necessarily, that geographic connection. The other aspects we were looking at were the idea that we really wanted to be a big player in the cultural space in Los Angeles and the Southern California basin, in the Southern California region, excuse me. We wanted to make sure that we were reaching as many audiences as we could with our really important mission focused on California native plants. So we thought the rebrand helped us align the scope and magnitude of our garden with this new name. And the last thing I'll say too is that we say California probably 8 million times a day, California Botanic Garden, because we're obsessed with the plants that make California special. So redwoods, chocolate trees, poppies, everything in between. And so it makes a lot more sense from an interpretive standpoint that we are California's or California Botanic Garden.
Sure. Absolutely. Wonderful. Do you want to, you can lead in with your presentation and put it on screen, and we can go from there. Unless you have anything else that our people should know.
Does everyone see this big, beautiful Joshua Tree mountainscape here? Do you see that, Matt?
I see it, yes. So hopefully, yes, we see it. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So here we go. California Botanic Garden is devoted to California native plants and all the wildlife and people who love them. So that is our big idea at the garden. That frames the entire experience when you're here. Like I said, we're devoted to native plants. And when we say all the wildlife and people who love them, well, native plants are foundational in virtually all of our ecosystems. And they are also completely intertwined with California Native American heritage. And that's something really important to us. So at the garden, it's not just about plants. Plants are an anchor and a vehicle to talk about so much more, and are cornerstone, keystone species in our ecosystems, and are so special. And one other thing I'll say on the slide is that California is considered a biodiversity hotspot, which I didn't know about when I first started. And that means we are a place of unparalleled biological richness and species diversity. And so that's astounding. We actually house, I think, 1/3 of all species in the contiguous United States.
Wow.
So that's pretty fantastic. And there's a lot that goes into that, our geography, our topography, and many other things that a botanist will correct me on. But it's still astounding. And when you come to our garden, we try to tell that story. And so I wanted to take you a little on a virtual adventure, if you will, and say, adventuring through our 86 acres in Claremont, you can discover inspiration for gardening with California native plants. So you all probably listening have heard the term water-wise 800,000 times. And it is a great word. Native plants are fabulously water-wise in most all cases. And so that lowers your water bill. Another thing I want to talk about too is that they are so integral to our ecosystems. So when you transform your lawn, or maybe a water-needy ornamental landscape that you might have, you're actually doing a great service for the ecosystem if you're incorporating California native plants.
Sure.
So native plants evolved here, they belong here, and they support so many species. So butterflies and hummingbirds, and a great diversity of insects on top of butterflies, bees. So you're really becoming interwoven into the tapestry of our local ecosystems when you plant native plants.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last thing I'll say on this slide is that our garden has a lot of demonstration areas, and our garden's divided into 3 what we call realms. We have the SoCal Gardens, which is the lower section right when you walk in. And that's really speaking to the plants that define our home here in Southern California in Claremont. And so we're showing you the Channel Islands, we're showing you the chaparral, we're showing you the desert, and we're even showing you plants that grow in the San Gabriel Mountains. And then you wander up onto our mesa, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, the namesake Indian Hill Mesa, or Indian Hill, the road that we all drive here in Claremont. So the mesa is about a 30-foot to maybe 50-foot topographical feature, and up on that mesa are some amazing native landscaping that shows native plants in an in a garden context. Excuse me. So you can get some really good ideas there for how you might convert your lawn or convert your landscape and integrate these beautiful plants into your lives and into your gardens.
Right. Awesome.
And I just cannot do a presentation about California Botanic Garden without talking about my favorite tree. So we have a majestic oak, our majestic oak at California Botanic Garden. It's estimated to be over 300 years old. I thought about putting 400 years in, but I thought I would be a little maybe more honest. So it's kind of a wives' tale, our fishtail. We never really know exactly how unless we cord the tree, and of course we're not going to do that. But it is an old tree, and it's beautiful. It's considered, what one might call a grandmother oak. It's been here for generations, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So I definitely consider it a landmark here in Claremont and at California Botanic Garden.
Definitely.
And then you'll also see many rare and endangered plants that call California home. This is what they call an island bush poppy, or Dendromecon harfortii, for all of you that speak Latin out there. This is a plant native to the Channel Islands, and I've been lucky enough to see them in Catalina, and they're just so beautiful. So, I mean, this is related to our beautiful state flower, the golden poppies, but has taken on this tree-like or bush-like form, and it blooms almost year-round.
Wow.
But it's kind of crazy, believe it or not. It's remarkably rare. I mean, given that its natural distribution is isolated to the Channel Islands, that makes sense. But we're hoping through conservation programs, but also through horticulture, that we can turn people on to plants just like this one and get them excited and even grow them in their home landscape.
Sure.
Another thing that's really important to us is connection to people and culture who love native plants, and that's fundamentally California Native people. And we work with Tongva elders and culture keepers. Chief Anthony and Julia Bajani are two people that we work a lot with, and we host an acorn festival most Novembers, and we hope we'll find some way of doing that this year.
Sure.
But we also host a number of programs and classes that provide platforms for Native people to share their art forms or their cultural perspectives related to native plants, and that's something that's really important. And we also include that in our interpretation on site.
Wonderful.
And then, of course, just beauty and surprises in every season. So, we are an 86-acre botanic garden, and California has different seasons, believe it or not. And there are beautiful plants that bloom throughout, and there's always visual interest and beauty to find at California Botanic Garden. So I try to walk every day. I'm very lucky. And I hope that you, being here in Claremont or maybe regionally, that you get to enjoy it too, because it's just gorgeous. So what I want to say here at this juncture is, another way we like to say at California Botanic Garden what we're here for is we're here to conserve and celebrate California native plants. And you might say, how are you celebrating them? Well, I want to go over that a little bit, what that word really means to us. And we celebrate the horticultural beauty of California native plants. So when we celebrate, we mean we love them. We sell them in our Grow Native nursery. We espouse the facets that make them so unique. So in this case, horticultural beauty, we like to argue and say that California native plants are just as beautiful as all the others, and in fact have a unique and beautiful visual identity that is specific to California.
Sure.
And so we really try to encourage that. We celebrate the ecological importance of California native plants. So like I was mentioning earlier, California native plants are vital in our ecosystems. And so when you have 86 acres of California native plants, you have 86 acres of California native animals.
Right.
Come, and you're going to see them. You're going to see, I would almost guarantee you, every single visit, you will probably see all three species of our squirrels. We have a western gray squirrel, which is the native species, an eastern fox squirrel, which is the non-native, and then a native ground squirrel. But you're also going to see, I learned this recently, a kaleidoscope of butterflies. That's the term for a group of butterflies. But you'll see monarchs just on our milkweed here. Okay. And you'll see over 20 different species of butterfly. I think over 100 species of birds have been recorded in the garden, both migratory as well as resident birds. We've been fortunate enough to be graced with bobcat sightings the last several months. So there's a bobcat family that hangs out and lives at California Botanic Garden.
Wow.
So much to see. And so that's what you'll be surprised every visit. It took me, I think, 3 years to finally see the bobcat. So, it's it's worth holding out for.
Definitely.
And like I mentioned too, we celebrate the cultural heritage around California native plants and recognize that California native plants have been part of Native American culture for thousands of years, and that there are really beautiful philosophies and perspectives around native plants that native people have stewarded. And so it's important to us to share that and to be an active promoter of those voices and to bring California native people in to share those stories and to drive our programs and interpretation on that level.
Sure. We do have a few questions real quick.
Sure.
One, I want to make sure that we stay caught up on them. And if David, if you have a topic that you're going to cover where the answer would be better, we can just move forward with your presentation. Brian asked, I'll go kind of out of order here. How long have you been with the Botanical Garden?
I've been there about 4.5 years. Yeah.
Okay. And how are the gardens a part of Sustainable Claremont, or are they?
Yeah, it's a great question. We provide space for Sustainable Claremont and like to consider ourselves a partner with them. And part of that is offering up our space for them to have an office housed in California Botanic Garden.
Wonderful. We have some comments, a few comments here. Beautiful images. The majestic oak is truly majestic, and the garden is very beautiful. So thanks, guys, and feel free. Just a reminder. If you have any questions, feel free to just post them in chat, and we'll take a little break in the conversation. Try to keep ourselves connected with you guys and make sure that we cover thoroughly any questions that you do have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So sorry for interrupting you there, David, but please continue.
Please do. Yeah. So another thing we celebrate certainly is the science behind California native plants. I mentioned we have a research department, and part of that is an amazing graduate program. And I learn things every day from our professors as well as our students. And so we're uncovering secrets and mysteries about native plants, learning about their populations. And some of our students have made conservation plans and have done remarkable work in the field of conservation. So it's a really multidimensional place, California Botanic Garden. And in the ideal world, and what we always strive for is that those dimensions are always speaking to each other. So the public garden, our conservation programs, our research, and I think we are effective in that way, that we bridge all of these ways that we're trying to support and safeguard California native plants. And so when you come here, you're learning one part of the story, and there's so much opportunity to connect with more through our exhibitions or through our programs, through our virtual content. So yeah.
Wonderful. Actually, Brian has a comment here that all of his yard is 100% California native, and he credits the Botanical Garden having spent many hours there.
That's so awesome. I mean, that really touches my heart, and I think that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
I like to say I consider Brian's property 1 acre in our garden. Anytime someone adds California native plants to their yard, you are becoming part of this beautiful tapestry of California native plants. So I just really applaud that, and I'm so happy to know that people are feeling encouraged and inspired to do that.
Absolutely.
So what's important to us is, we also absolutely conserve California native plants, and that's the other part of our story. And so we're trying to bridge that with our botanic garden, our public garden. And we actually treat our garden as a living museum, which is really cool to know that so many of the plants in our collections are accessioned. So just like a piece of artwork is accessioned in a museum, and you could say, look at a Picasso painting and know it's what we call its provenance. So you can know all the different people who had owned it in their lifetime, going all the way back to who made it. So maybe Picasso in this case. You have an idea of where that piece came from, where it is now, all the people that it's gone through. And that's really important to the integrity of museum collections. Sure. In the same way, and in a really beautiful maybe echo of that, our plants are accessioned. And so we know in many cases where the plant was collected from, down to GPS coordinates. We know where in the state it was from. And so we actually have native plants in our living museum that hold really important genetic information. One example I'll give is on Catalina. I'll go back to Catalina again. there is the Catalina Island Mountain Mahogany, and there's only, I think, 6 specimens left in the wild in the world. So there's just 6 of these beautiful, almost bonsai-like trees. They're growing on the side of a canyon in Catalina Island, and they were decimated by feral goats and other herbivores on Catalina, and now there's only 6 left.
Wow.
Well, California Botanic Garden holds what you could call clones of all of those individuals. So I think we have maybe between 20 and 50. I'd have to actually look at the collections list, but we have essentially specimens that account for all of that genetic diversity. So say the most terrible thing happened, and I'm knocking on wood, say a wildfire went through that canyon, or those trees succumbed to some type of blight or some type of natural cause, death of natural causes. We hold the genetic diversity for those plants. And so that's just one example. There are so many across our garden. And it's just so cool that, when you're walking amongst our 86 acres, they're definitely beautiful, but they're also so important in the fight to save and safeguard our native plants.
Absolutely. Brian mentions here also that he uses less. Of course, he being the water guy, he's got to go with this. He uses less than 10,000 gallons every 2 months, and he has a pool, so combine that. And the average in Laverne and Claremont is 32,000. So by switching to California native and conserving not only in the wild but also in his yard, there's a real economic benefit and an environmental benefit besides just conserving the plants and continuing them to grow. It also helps with the water issues that we face here in California.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, my personal stance is the time has come that if you do have property or you are lucky enough to have land, you can really garden as an activist. And that doesn't have to be scary. That just means that you can really think critically about how you can make your space and your garden interconnected into this larger ecosystem and this ecology. And so I think that's absolutely excellent. And it's so inspiring, I think, that we can each do our part individually and as a community to grow native plants in our yards. And that's going to exactly, what Brian said, it's going to save on our water bill. It's going to support our local ecosystem, and it's going to help, overall with our water crisis. I mean, if you can just imagine everyone doing that, how fabulous. And the last statistic I read was that there is over 40 million acres of green lawn in North America, and that's astounding. I mean, think about how.
Sure.
Just think about how much water, fertilizer, and things like that are used to maintain the lawn. And so, transitioning to native plants here in California, but also across the country, people finding beauty in their regional flora could have immense environmental benefit for everyone across the country. So I think, it's such a great way to connect with our environment, and it's an exciting way that you can be an advocate for nature in your local area.
Definitely. Chris, I'll get to your question in just a second, but along those lines, Brian also asks if you have worked with the Chino Basin Conservation District in Montclair.
Yes, I think we have on a couple different interpretive programs, but I can't think of any current partnerships that we're working on.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, and Chris, Chris has a question about the graduate school program.
Sure.
If you also, specifically, he asks if you provide other classes, possibly for like the public, I would imagine, to help kind of promote the California native plants and how we can kind of, I imagine Chris asking this question in the spirit of how we can kind of get involved as neighbors of yours.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yes, we do. We have a community education program. And in fact, we're gearing up this fall to have a big slate of different virtual classes that people can learn how to design and rethink their lawn with natives, then also learn kind of gardening with native plants 101. So we'll talk about kind of the first steps that you need to take to start adding them to your garden. And then throughout the fall months, we'll be offering classes that focus on things like irrigation, pest management, pruning, seed collection. So we'll have a number of different classes that will help people learn more about gardening with native plants. In addition, we have classes that are geared more towards botany. So we traditionally offer Botany 101 classes. We also, our professors will, and research faculty will also offer more intensive workshops about particular species or particular groups of plants. Travis Columbus, who's one of our professors, specializes in grasses, and he teaches a really intensive two-day workshop. And it's really cool. You learn about things that you never would even realize about grasses. So, there's many different ways to connect with us at California Garden.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we have a few other questions, but I'll let you continue with your presentation. We'll move on, and I do have my place marked, so don't worry. I will get to your questions, and please feel free to keep them coming.
Yeah. Oh, this is so great. Yeah. So on the maybe inverse of, we're here to celebrate and conserve California native plants is the conservation aspect. So we are out in the field virtually every day in California doing some type of really important conservation or research work. And so our garden is not just 86 acres. I like to really think of it as California. We're doing a lot of work to safeguard and protect and conserve native plants out and beyond our walls or our fences.
Sure.
And so just some of the ways we do that is we study and safeguard rare and endangered plants. So we do things called like species monitoring, or we're studying plant populations to better understand how rare they actually might be, or how threatened they would be if, say, a wildfire came through. Naomi Fraga, our director of conservation programs, is amazing, and she has embarked on so many different conservation projects and initiatives, and has brought about success in a lot of different areas. And success is a challenging word in conservation because your work's never really done.
Right.
But she, for instance, there's a plant that was delisted. So on the federal level of listing rare and endangered plants, there's a plant called the Hidden Lake Blue Curls, which is this beautiful little annual flower that grows up in San Jacinto Mountain. And Naomi's worked, I think, almost the past, decade, working really hard to understand how that species occurs. It's what you call its phenology, when it seeds, when it flowers, what threats there might be to it. And in this case, there was a lot of hiking and horseback riders that were trampling plants, ATVs. And so they thought about making a conservation plan where they, I think, put in fences to block off kind of the most crucial sensitive areas. And through a lot of different efforts and work, they were able to successfully get the species delisted, which is an amazing accomplishment. It basically says that there are enough protections and safeguards in place that the plant doesn't need that level of protection. And of course, Naomi's going back and ensuring that holds up, and making sure that the plant is safe. But it's a testament to her work and the work of our conservation programs that she was able to do that. And so there's many, many stories just like that we're working towards every day.
Sure. And let's see, we have actually a question about a rare flower here, and I go to this. It seems like a good question for what we're talking about, but I didn't know that you actually have a nursery on site as well, it sounds like. And so Cass asks if you sell the rare flowering plant from the Channel Islands in the nursery.
Yes, that plant is so coveted, and I'm going to give you an insider secret, that we typically will grow them and prepare them for our fall plant sale. So the nursery is actually closed right now.
Sure.
For the season. So we typically say summer is just not the best time to plant native plants. Sure. They need time to get established in cooler temperatures. They like certainly the natural precipitation that we are hopefully lucky enough to get in the fall. And so fall is just a better time to plant. So we reopen our nursery traditionally about the second or third week in October. I would definitely mark your calendars or just keep your eyes out for when we announce the opening of Grow Native Nursery, because that's the time to nab those plants. Or the Channel Island tree poppy is super popular, and those typically sell out in, I would say, the first week or two of our nursery being open.
Definitely.
So keep tabs on that, because that plant is so worth it if you can find the right space for it and you can nab it from our nursery, because it blooms, I would say, almost year round. Wow. And has the most turquoise colored leaves. It's just such a pretty plant.
Wonderful. We have some questions also about events, but I think I imagine you'll probably cover that. So I'll kind of mark my place here, and we'll get to your questions about events here probably in a few moments.
Yeah, sounds great. So I know this picture might not be the most exciting one in the world, but it's important because we have the biggest seed bank devoted to California native plants, and that's so cool. So there are tons and tons and tons of seeds in those 4 freezers there. And this is a type of conservation that we call ex situ conservation, or conservation that's not happening on site. So the Hidden Lake blue curl story I just told you about is an example of on-site conservation, where we are facilitating efforts to conserve those plants right there, right where they grow naturally in Hidden Lake on Mount San Jacinto. And so we're doing a lot of efforts to control for herbivory, or people walking on them unintentionally, or people riding with them on horses, or riding over them on horses. Whereas our seed bank is an ex situ conservation program, and it is so paramount because what it enables us to do is safeguard seeds for almost indefinite periods of time. There are stories of seeds being viable thousands of years later after they've been produced. And so seeds can handle a state of dormancy for a long period of time. That's not true of all species, but it is true for many.
Mm-hmm.
And so, say the worst happens and a rare plant population is all burned down in a wildfire. Well, if we have 300 seeds in our seed bank, there's a chance that we might be able to bring that plant back to life.
Sure.
And so that's really important. And I think it's so cool that we have this, and that we have such amazing colleagues in conservation that are driving this.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm messing with for our audience. I am messing with the screen a little bit here. Don't adjust your sets, but I want to make sure that I've got the screen properly fit, so we're not cutting off anything of your presentation.
Oh yeah, sure. One thing I want to say too, we just released a podcast episode, which you can find on our website, that talks about germination trials. And I think this is the coolest aspect of our seed bank. So germination, is the way seeds actually activate and begin to grow. And so we have to run germination trials in our seed bank to test the viability of seeds in storage. Because it's not valuable if, say, we store seeds in the freezer and then when we need to grow them, they don't grow.
Right.
And so we're trialing to see if they are viable, if they can grow. So you can't even believe how masochistic seeds are. They need so much damage and craziness in many cases to grow. So I'm talking about fire. We have sometimes had to burn our seeds.
Wow.
We had to scrape and clip and do all types of abrasive damage to our seeds. One of my favorite stories was, our seed conservation program manager, Cheryl Berker, was trying to successfully get some seeds to germinate. And she tried everything. She tried smoke water, which is even the things you use in barbecue. She used smoke water to try to give them the sense that there had been a wildfire. She had tried to clip them. She had tried a whole manner of different trials. And then they just stored them in the fridge thinking, okay, maybe they need to be cooled off or kept at a certain temperature to trigger germination. Well, someone accidentally broke the shelf and the seed pallet fell down on the ground and just scattered everywhere. And so she collected all the seeds back in the pallet and said, oh my God, oh well, these seeds are not meant to germinate. Well, after that seed pallet had fallen off, that is when all the seeds germinated.
Wow.
So you can maybe extrapolate that plant needs what we might call disturbance to germinate. It might need to fall down a cliff.
Sure.
It might, rumble around in an animal's stomach. It might need to, be carried down a long stream bed in a flash flood. So there's always magic and surprises at our seed bank, and I think that's just so fun.
That's really fascinating because you wouldn't normally. I mean, you just in a regular gardener's mindset, you would never think about something like that.
Exactly. And when you get the tomato packet of seeds at, say, Sprouts or Trader Joe's, or wherever you can purchase seeds like that, they've been selected for germination success. They've been, you're looking at about a 90% germination result, and
Right.
that's something that Cheryl has taught me. And the seeds in our seed bank don't have that. They haven't necessarily been cultivated for that level of success.
Exactly. Right.
And that goes back to the idea that these seeds are waiting for, in the wild, are waiting for just the right moment. They really have to capitalize, and you could almost use the anthropomorphic word know. These seeds have to know when just the right time it is to germinate, because
Sure.
it's a crapshoot. If you germinate at the wrong time, it's done for you. So you really have to, as a seed, really have to know just when you've passed through the digestive tract of an animal, or just when you've fallen down that cliff, or just when you've been exposed to fire. So the seeds have just such a crazy story to tell.
Wow.
And so part of all of this is we restore habitat, and we do that through so many ways. Here we're looking at what was once, I think, a burn area. And so when there's been a fire, like say the Blue Cut fire or the Holy Jim fire, we will go out after and we will rejuvenate the site. We'll look at what was there. We'll grow plants that have genetics specific to that area, and we'll do outplanting. And so that's what's happening here. You can even see in the distance there these big barrels of water.
Mm-hmm.
And so these our conservation staff here are working to restore this site. Other ways we do that are removing invasive plants, and I think you might be able to see a lot of that gorgeous yellow flower in this photograph.
Yeah.
As gorgeous as it might seem, is not native. That's a mustard plant. Mm-hmm. And another service that our conservation team does is remove invasive species, which are a big problem. And I bet some of our listeners know about that. What fuels so many of our wildfires in California is invasive species. They tend to be very competitive, grow very quickly, die and dry out very quickly, and you're basically left with hills and hills of tinder.
Right.
So it's really important to restore those areas for a lot of reasons. For supporting the ecology, those native plants typically don't support any native insects or birds or anything in between. And then they also pose an immense danger for humans in the sense that they provide fodder for fire.
Right. Of
So,
course.
so our conservation, yeah.
One question that came up here, kind of on the topic of the seed bank and conservation, is the experiment, the degree to which you guys experiment with the hybridization of species.
Oh, I love that. That's a great question. Yeah, we have a garden on site called the California Cultivar Garden. And that is an amazing place to experience all types of plants just like that have been hybridized or naturally selected. And it's really cool. I also call it the mad scientist garden.
Of course.
You get to see plants that wouldn't otherwise cross in the wild, that someone really had it in their mind to say, take this flower color and try to get it with this crazy branching structure. And so there's a lot of really cool examples like that.
Awesome.
We are not necessarily actively working on that in terms of conservation, but in horticulture, if a plant catches our eye in the horticulture staff, we might try to bring it into what we call the trade. And one that I'm trying to bring into the trade, that I'm trying to convince our horticulture staff to bring into the nursery, is a plant. Some of our listeners might be familiar with it. I'll try to find a picture later on, but it's called the woolly blue curls.
Oh, okay.
And it's a really beautiful plant, big, beautiful purple flowers that are really fuzzy. And in our 86 acres, 1 out of maybe 1,000 will have white flowers. And so you suddenly have this beautiful snowy white color, and it's so pretty. And I have a name for it called woolly snow curls. But the horticulturalists tell me white is just not a super popular color in the nursery trade. So
interesting.
That's like one consideration to say, it takes a lot of effort to bring a native plant into cultivation, into the nursery trade. And so all the factors have to be right to do that.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. So another way we do that is through our research programs, which I mentioned. And we have a graduate botany program. And part of that too is we have a lab that we do that helps support our conservation work, helps provide analyses for plants and for DNA and for other aspects that the botanists are looking at. We also have a world-class herbarium. We have, I think, the 10th now largest herbarium in North America. And herbariums are so cool. When I first started, I wasn't incredibly inspired by it. I was like, what are all of these dead plants doing in these folders stacked in, I was like, why did they get 3/4 of the building?
Right.
for their cabinets full of dead plants.
Sure.
But what I realized, and why I'm such a huge fan and advocate for herbaria now, is that those can give you an understanding of plants in time spanning all the way back, 150 years. I think we have some really historic collections in our records. And so not only can you say unfold an herbarium specimen and garnish an understanding about the plant, but you can actually extract DNA from plants that were collected 100 years ago.
Wow.
And so that has huge implications for understanding things like populations and genetics of a given species. And so the herbarium is truly this collection that can inspire and influence plant science and help uncover secrets and mysteries and riddles. And so the herbarium is so cool. It's so much, more in concept and in practice than, say, maybe our inclination to say, it's just a bunch of dead plants in newspaper.
Right.
You guys might know, oh God, I'm forgetting his name. Kuhlhauser, California's Gold. He has visited before he passed away, of course, when he was doing his show, California Gold, he visited the garden a couple times, and he visited the herbarium. And I just love one of his quotes. He said, you mean to tell me that this is a plant morgue? It is a plant morgue, I guess, but it provides such amazing opportunities for research.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into how can we connect during COVID? How can all of everyone out there listening connect with California Botanic Garden? I just wanted to share a couple ways and let you know that the garden is very much here and very much alive, and that we are so excited to connect with you. You can enjoy the garden, and so I mentioned we're open with limited capacity Wednesdays through Sundays in those two different time frames. And so please come out. We do have COVID protocols in place, to wear masks, to stay socially distant. We're actively sanitizing our spaces frequently throughout the day. And we have limited capacity that we have not surpassed. So I don't want to scare anyone thinking that they'll arrive to a full garden. We keep our capacity to 300 guests in each time block. Okay. And what is important and what we do recommend is that you purchase your tickets before you come if you can. So you can do that on your mobile phone. You could do that on a desktop, just at our homepage. On our homepage is a big button that says public tickets, and you can buy your tickets there. Okay. If you're a member of our garden and it's so worthwhile to be one, you can come to the garden without any reservations. So being a member has huge perks, and sure. You can visit anytime without a reservation, which is really fun. All right, and then I want to say, check out our online content. We post a podcast monthly, and so this was a really great one about squirrels. Yeah. And there's more to squirrels than you might know. And there's actually, I mentioned there's a native western gray squirrel and an invasive eastern fox squirrel, and there's this battle playing out between those two species. And there's a scientist and a biologist who's studying the impacts of that invasive species in our very garden. Some of you who live here in Claremont might know that the colleges and our community used to have a lot more western gray squirrels, and those have been pushed out by the non-native red fox squirrel. And they only really live here in the garden now in terms of the Claremont area. Right. And so our podcast will share all about that and why that's happened and what's going on in the world of squirrels.
Awesome.
The other thing is we are hosting really great virtual events, and they're not just virtual. They have these awesome physical components. So we're so excited for Freeze Wild, which is a fusion of native plants and ice cream, my two favorite things in the world. Sure. And so our friend Tony at Burton Rocky, we're collaborating, and she's making these amazing flavors that incorporate native plants. and you can sign up, and you'll be able to pick up a box with 3 different pints of ice cream, July 29th and 30th, that have native plants in them. And then we'll have an event kind of just like this, where we'll taste along and just say, oh my God, how great Coyote Mint chip is, or oh, how great Cactus Cream is. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and our tickets are available on the homepage of the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I have.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, David. We do have a few other questions. If you want to stop sharing your screen, it'll bring us back up.
Right.
And then we can kind of. Oh, there we go. Hang on. Bear with me. Don't touch your set. It's okay. All right. Here we go. So a few questions that we do have regarding the events. Let's see. I want to get back to my place. Somebody asked about the Luminaria event during the holidays, and asked if you could describe it. That they haven't been able to attend, and hopefully you'll be able to put that on this year. I hope.
Yeah, right. It's kind of up in the air, but I think our definite intention is and hope is to do it. But it's really special. We have about 3,000 lanterns that hang around the garden, and then we have certain venues that have candlelit, what we call lumies or luminarias. And so those create beautiful little paths and trails for people to walk through. And it's a really magical time. We also have acoustic musicians in our venues. And so you can kind of sit and sip hot chocolate or enjoy a beverage and roast marshmallows and listen to our musicians. So it's really special, and we're trying to figure out how we just might do it in this kind of world of COVID.
Right.
But we're optimistic. I think we can find a way to maybe limit our audience each night and do things safely. So
sure. Sure. And another question kind of along the same lines is somebody that had attended a folk music festival there a few years ago, wondering if there's any plans for concerts or similar fundraisers here in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We know how much music is loved, and we know that the folk festival was just so beautiful. We try to bring music in whenever we can. So with Luminaria Nights, with our Brew Wild Beer Festival, I would love to reinvigorate the folk music festival when we're able to do so. I think that was just very successful, and musicians are an awesome part of our community, and it pairs so well with our garden. So yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Right. I'm scrolling through and make sure these were a few questions ago. I want to make sure I get to everybody. I don't want to miss anybody here. One person, Alex, was asking also in terms of visiting, whether you would recommend mornings or evenings.
Oh, that's a great question. Right now, I'm really enchanted by evenings. You can be there till 8 p.m., and so you can see the golden hour, which is really wonderful. And so you can really, relax in the day, or relax from the stresses of the day, and just really enjoy that kind of evening beauty. So I love the evening, but we have a lot of people that come and take advantage of the morning hours to walk and be there before the temperatures get super hot. So you can't go wrong, but I think it's so fun that you can be there at night right now. It's kind of special.
Absolutely. I think that is all of the questions. I don't think I missed anybody. I know that I had been also one of the events that I've been to was the nocturnal. I think it was I forget exactly what it was called, but I remember.
Things that go. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I've been to that. That was fantastic.
Yeah, we love that. Yeah, this is such a. I hate using the word brand because it sounds it sounds a little sterile.
Sure.
That is such our brand. I think we are this wild-esque and very natural space, and we celebrate that. We celebrate, our native plants, and so we love kind of having a more earthy experience. And I think Things That Go Bump is definitely a part of that. Right. I'd also say, maybe jumping back to Luminaria, there's so many gardens you can go to here in Southern California, and a lot of these winter events. And so Descanso does a really cool enchanted forest event with lots of lights and interactivity and lots of technology. And so that's great. But our approach is we're the acoustic version.
Sure, definitely.
We're a bit more meditative and contemplative, and we celebrate that. So, that's our brand.
Very cool. Chris asks here if you work with the Fairplex and their farm.
Oh, great question. No, not at the moment. We're partners in the sense that we donate to each other. They help us out at our gala, but we don't have any programs that we work with them on.
Okay. And one question I was wondering also was, given I know that there's a lot going on with the research program, is any of that still happening? And are you impacted at all? I'm sure at all, kind of everybody's impacted, but with the colleges not coming back or virtual classes, how's that going to impact the garden?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our master's and PhD students are a kind of different style of student, if you will. They're very self-driven in their research. And so now actually in the summer, they're able to go to what their study sites are. And so those are up in the Sierras, those are out in the desert. And so they're able to conduct a lot of their research independently of the garden. They don't have to be. When they're using spaces alone. They're kind of doing a routine of sanitization before and after they enter. So it's limited occupancy, if you will. And the nice thing is that in this season, they're encouraged to do a lot of field research and field study. So they're out in the world and out in the wild. And the same is true for our conservation department. Fortunately, that most of our conservation team is out in the wild environs anyway. So they're other being inside, I guess, if you will.
Sure. Wonderful. And thank you, Alex. Reminded me I did miss a few. One question, Alex's question, how many poisonous plants do you have at the garden?
That's a great question. I'm assuming you mean poisonous that if you ingest it, poison, or do you mean poison oak if you come in contact with it?
I would imagine poison. Probably ingest. Let's go with ingested. I'm not really sure where Alex is going with this question. I don't know if I like it or not.
Well, I'll just it's hard to say. There are kind of known ideas that, lupins, for instance, part of the pea family, lupins are actually in the pea family, are toxic. Our toyon, which is this gorgeous, you probably are familiar with it even if you don't know the name. It's this beautiful shrub that looks almost like holly, and in the winter has these big red bushels of berries. That has cyanide in it. It's related to apples, and so apples actually have cyanide in the seeds in very trace amounts, but toyon has cyanide in the leaves. But I hope you're not going around browsing leaves in the garden. I don't think you have to worry. Right. I will though about surface contact. We do have a plant called flannel bush, and it's so terribly named because it makes you want to hug it. It makes you think like flannel shirt or like a teddy bear. Sure. Well, when actually the leaves of flannel bush, they are fuzzy, but those fuzzy little things are actually, I don't know if you've ever played Brads, I think is what it's called, or Jacks maybe.
Jacks, yeah.
Yeah, so Jacks have the little kind of crazy spiky things. It's right. Like a million Jacks across the surface of the leaves, and those come off in your skin.
Wow.
And it's not painful. It's just incredibly obnoxious. It's like It's like someone rubbing sandpaper on you all the time. And no matter if you wash or rub soap, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And some people do have dermatitis triggered by it.
Sure.
So don't flannel bushes.
Understood. Got it. What is the oldest species of plant? I'm sorry if I had my glasses. Of plant in the garden, and I know you kind of touched on, may not know about the trees or anything, but what's the oldest species in the garden?
Yeah, so definitely I would say our majestic oak, and to that point, I would say, I think the garden has had a very layered and nuanced history. It's gone from being a Native American village site, allegedly, and that comes from a Tongva culture keeper who reported that to us. And it's very highly probable that it certainly was a center for Native American activity. It has also been a citrus orchard or part of a ranch kind of property. And then, of course, now it's a botanic garden.
Sure.
Throughout those chapters, it's had what we call site native plants. So the oak trees, many of the oak trees that kind of line the edge of the mesa are site native, meaning no one planted them. They were here, they were here for a very long time. They seeded themselves as acorns, and they've been growing. In the case of the majestic oak, over 300 years old. And so those oaks are coast live oaks. That's Quercus agrifolia. I'm learning. I like to say, I kind of work at the Vatican.
Uh-huh.
And I'm learning every day through language immersion. But
yeah.
they're coast live oaks, and those are what we call site native. And many of them, I would say, are 100 years old, if not several hundred, and so they're so special to see.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question that's come in. What's your favorite place in the garden?
Oh my God, that's so hard.
You only have to pick one. Sorry, they say one, so you can only pick.
Right. I think the back. Many people know it as like the back 40. We call it the California habitats. And when you're out there, it feels like you're in a national park, or it feels like you're in a wilderness area. And my favorite part of that is the what we call the Mojave Desert section. So next time you're at the garden, go to the California habitats and venture out to the Mojave section on the map. And it is so, maybe to use a word, transportive. And you suddenly feel like you're surrounded by Joshua trees and native palm trees, all types of cactus and agave, different succulents and things like that, beautiful manzanitas and other types of shrubs and plants. And so for a moment there, you feel totally transported to, a gorgeous desert landscape. And I think that's my favorite area, because you're like, wow, suddenly, where am I? Where is this place?
I think that's very cool. I think it's also very, like you said, transportive in terms of coming from Claremont, the city of trees, to something that's obviously very California, but not something that we have very close to us. We've kind of urbanized quite a bit, and so you kind of forget some of our natural heritage.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I would say that it's interesting. We do and we don't, in the sense that there are many plants in our garden that are local, in the sense that they grow right up in our foothills, or they grow in preserved areas. But you're absolutely right that much of Southern California has been developed, and we've lost that connection. And so when you're at our garden, you're also kind of connecting with a piece of habitat, with a piece of history and heritage.
Sure.
The counterpoint to that is, California is an immense state, and like I said before, it's a biodiversity hotspot. How cool is it that on a road trip, maybe if you're insane, you could do this in one day, but you could go from Joshua trees to redwoods to giant sequoias. Our state is so superlative, and in terms of its plants. And so I really like to say, California identity is so dependent on California plants. Where would we be without our redwoods? Where would we be without our Joshua trees? Where would we be without giant sequoias?
Sure.
Even just in our state, we have the tallest, the biggest, and the oldest trees on the planet.
Wow.
And that's in California. So how amazing that's we're home to that. California's the best.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I think that does it for the questions here. Everyone's saying excellent presentation, and thank you very much, David. Sounds like Alex is going to be giving you a visit tomorrow, so don't let her out of there with any poisonous anything of that variety. Is there anything else that you'd like our viewers to know about finding you on social media or tuning into that podcast that you mentioned? How can we support you?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for asking. I would say the best thing to do is go to our homepage, calbg.org. So that's CALBG.org. And that's a great conduit to our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There's a link there to all of our virtual content. It's stored right in one place, one landing page. And so on that, you can find our podcast, virtual tours, visual galleries, so all manners of online engagement. And you can also purchase tickets. So you can buy tickets right there on that homepage. So it's a great place to go. And yeah, I would just say come early and often. The garden is just such a beautiful place, and it's we want to be open as long as it is safe and responsible to do so, because we think it's providing our community with a place to find refuge and solace in these really, really hard times. So
Sure.
we want to be open as long as we can, and as long as we think that it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to kind of put it like this, but one of the things that's really nice about your garden is that it's a different visit every time. Things are always sort of changing and different. It's a different experience every time you go.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And the differences can sometimes be subtle, but that's what's so gorgeous. Like, it kind of mirrors the hikes that you might go on. The more you find yourself attuned to the natural world and attuned to your local environment, the more beauty you're going to find. And so that's the invitation I kind of give to you when you come to California Botanic Garden, is find that subtle beauty. We might not have the biggest roses. We might not have crazy orchids. We might not have insane palm trees. But we do have beauty, and it's there, and it is an adventure to discover what's beautiful out there. So
absolutely.
So yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you again, David. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream here. So thanks, everybody, with Active Claremont. I appreciate you tuning in and supporting the California Botanic Garden. And again, a huge thank you to you, David, for being flexible and coming out to donate some of your time for our benefit.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Wonderful. We'll see you guys next time. Take care. Okay, David.